Welcome to Academic Matters, hosted by the Office of Academic Affairs at the Rutgers School of Public Health. I am Dr. Laura Leong, and I'm excited to be featuring the goings-on of the teaching and research at the School of Public Health. We'll hear from individuals who work, teach, or do research at the school, as well as talk about important issues concerning our students. And today's guest is Dr. Merlene Fredericks-James, Associate Professor in our Department of Urban Global Public Health. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Laura. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Just first tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, where should I start? I think probably most persons are picking up the accent. So that's a Caribbean accent. I'm actually from St. Lucia. I grew up in St. Lucia, spent most of my life there, although I wasn't born there. Yeah, so that's me. I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I have one daughter who's a junior right now at Rutgers.
At Rutgers?
Yeah, so I'm very happy, proud of her.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I'm an instructor. So I actually started off as an instructor.
And back to teaching. And what did you do in St. Lucia?
Yeah.
Because I think what you did in St. Lucia is fascinating to me.
Well, as I said, I practiced clinically for a number of years. And then I went into public health. And for the last 10 years before I made a change,
Mm-hmm.
I was actually the chief medical officer of the island. So I'm
Yeah.
in charge of the whole public health component, overseeing
Yeah.
the public health system.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fantastic. That's pretty awesome that you were the chief medical officer for the island.
It
of
was a
St.
good
Lucia.
experience.
Yeah, good experience. That's
Mhm.
great. But so you mentioned that you started out with the clinical and then got into public health. So how did you get into public health? What was your path to public health?
All right. And that's quite interesting because I don't think I probably really chose it. I was looking at different options. I was looking at specializing in emergency medicine at one point in time. But something about public health drew me, the opportunity to do interventions to better the lives of not just the individual, but entire populations and make that type of change at the policy level, at the programmatic level, some research. So that really fascinated me.
Yeah. So you it kind of fell into your path.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's great. But as you mentioned, you're now teaching. You had an interesting path, but now you're teaching public health students. So what do you enjoy about teaching and, why do you find it gratifying?
Right. And of course, there are many, many different things that I enjoy. But certainly for me, it's a passion. It's an opportunity to actually help develop the next generation. And I really think that's an important role. And I savor that role. I love interacting with students. I love the feedback. As you well know, we have students with quite a variety in terms of background.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very
So we
diverse
have
student
various,
population. Yeah.
right? So we have various ages, we have various ethnicities and cultures and perspectives, and it's really good to be in a classroom and interacting with all of those individuals. Everyone bringing their own contribution to the subject.
Yeah, it's nice to have that variety in the classroom.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
enjoy that as well. You teach several courses, but we're going to just talk about one of the courses that you teach, which is culture and health. What's the purpose of that course? What are you trying to get across in culture?
Right. So I think many persons, when they think of culture, they think of something that other persons have. I don't think that persons necessarily see themselves generally as having a culture. So it's usually, okay, well, maybe, those persons from the Caribbean have culture or some other part of the world. But I think the important thing is realizing that all of us have our own culture. And sometimes we may not acknowledge it, we may not realize even that what we're doing or the way we're behaving or thinking, our thoughts, our actions are part of our culture. But all of us definitely have culture. And there are many different things that impact health. We know there are biological factors, environmental factors. We know about the whole social determinants of health. But the cultural component, when it comes to the contribution that culture plays in terms of health, impacting health, the way health impacts culture. So it's definitely a very exciting area, and we
I
and we
can
look
tell
at
you
it
enjoy it.
from a variety of perspectives.
Mm-hmm. You get to teach it from a variety of perspectives. Is there something about the course that really gets you excited? Is there a particular module, an assignment, something that you look forward to in the course?
Yeah, I think most definitely this course also gives me an opportunity to share my own experiences and my background. As I said, and I think you would have realized from what I've shared so far, I have a practice background. So it's good to be able to bring this background, this experience into the course. I think it definitely adds value. It enables students to see that this is applicable to real life, and yeah, that component really
Yeah.
speaks to me.
Yeah, it's nice that you're able to bring in that your actual experience, which is both within the clinical side, but then also the public health side, being the chief medical officer for the island. So you have um, you have feet in both sides of that, the medical, but also the public health.
Right.
Yeah.
And culture, as you said, culture impacts on health in so many ways. Um, and also, as we said, health also feeds back on culture. And when we look at other things like the Sustainable Development Goals, um, the health components of the SDGs, it is interesting to see how culture actually impacts on some of those global goals. So, individual um, health, yes, but also at the global level.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Can you
culture
give us
has
an
this
example
impact.
of what you're kind of thinking about? How does culture impact some of those goals?
Right. So, one example, and actually, I think we're going to discuss it in the next class that we have, is we know that in certain countries there's still a culture, say, of child marriage, where girls are married off very early in their teens, and it's normal, it's accepted. But we also know of some of the health effects that young adolescents, young mothers can suffer. So young women are more exposed to various types of infections. They're at greater risk for complications during pregnancy and birth. It also impacts on their ability to, say, further their education, and it impacts on their ability to actually be able to sustain themselves or develop like a profession, because they may have to be taking care of children very, very early. Sexual transmitted diseases, higher risk in terms of intimate partner violence. So there are all of those different aspects. So when we look at the Sustainable Development Goals and we think of maternal mortality and we think of infant mortality or we think of the gender components, the education of girls, so all of those actually feed into something that may actually be a cultural practice.
Sure. Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
one
No,
example. Of course,
I
there
appreciate
are
that example.
others.
I appreciate that. You also mentioned that you feel like sometimes students don't see that they, or people, individuals, that they don't see that they have a culture, that it's something that you're studying for outwardly. Is there something else that you think people misunderstand about culture?
Okay. And let me just take the first component of that question. One of the exercises that we have in class is an opportunity for students to actually share about themselves, their culture, and they may actually have to go back and do some research and speak to parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles to get that perspective. Um, but it's something we have done, and it's quite interesting because some students would say, "Wow, the last time I did this, I was probably like in what, primary school, very,
Right.
very
Yeah.
young." But they really find it interesting and they like the idea that their whole, their entire being can be considered, because the cultural component is part of who they are.
Sure.
Even right. So that definitely um, comes to mind. Um,
Yeah.
I'll be quite
Yeah,
honest.
and then the
Mhm.
other part of the question was what do you think people misunderstand about culture?
Um, I think the other thing we ought to keep in mind too is that no culture is good or bad. I think sometimes it's easy to look on the cultures of others and sort of judge it
Mhm.
in relation to our own culture.
Sure.
So
What
that's
we
something.
know, what our own experiences are,
Right,
right? Yeah.
right. So that's part of the course where we have discussions, and we realize that yes, sometimes cultural practices can have negative effects. I'm not saying they don't, but still, we are not to judge anybody's culture. So we
Yeah.
come with an open mind, try to put ourselves in persons' places. Maybe if we were born in that context or grew up in that context, you understand, this would be like our normal way of being.
Yeah.
So I think that's the part about it. So
Right.
so not putting any value on anyone's culture and seeing all cultures
Yep.
like at the same level.
Yeah, at the same level. I like that. That's important. And really understanding the culture, um, or what are the cultures that you're the population that you're working with to then help to better serve them in terms
Definitely.
of population health, public health.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think, Laura, you're going into the cultural competency part.
Yeah.
We actually spend at least a week, a module discussing cultural competency. Because that's of real value, not just for public health professionals, because yes, we're developing public health professionals, but we need it in every aspect of our lives. Just thinking about the US, it's a multicultural place.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And increasingly so. And our public health practitioners need to be able to relate and treat and have proper interventions with all persons from many different backgrounds. So that part is also very,
Yeah.
very important.
And that also sounds like it's the answer to my next question
Okay.
about how do students benefit from the course, right? So they're benefiting by their being able to expand, enhance their own cultural competency.
Yes, most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
So that's one of the primary benefits. I think persons also benefit by learning more about others. I'm thinking, say right now, I'm actually teaching the class right now, and there are so many different perspectives in terms of culture in the class. So the students can actually learn from each other. So they can learn from the course material, they can learn from each other, and of course, actually recognize their own culture and get to appreciate their culture. I think that's, of course, there are many other benefits, but these are certainly some key
The top,
benefits.
the
Yeah.
top benefits. What have you learned from students taking the course?
Okay. I think that's a very good question. And actually, last week we had discussions, and we were discussing not a very happy topic, one that dealt with the different research atrocities, if you might call it that, that have occurred to persons of other cultures, where a dominant culture sees, another culture as an other and disadvantaged persons. And I came up with some examples. So we discussed certain examples in class, but the students were able to bring so many others, from their experiences, from their um, knowledge, the discussions with their peers or from other classes, other examples, where such atrocities had happened. So there's definitely a two-way learning.
Yeah.
It's not only a one-way street. Okay,
Yeah.
I am definitely
Yeah, you
learning,
get to learn too.
and yes, and
Yeah.
I'm willing to learn, and I
Yeah.
yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So something else that you do for the school is you are the coordinator of our online program for the MPH and Global Public Health. And uh, why do you think that program, like, why do you enjoy that role of being able to be kind of overseeing the students in the online MPH?
And it's good that you brought that up, Laura, because I was so focused on culture, I forgot the other aspects. Yeah, and I think that's such an important role, and it's great that the School of Public Health has actually decided to have this addition onto the Masters in Public Health program, because we find that many of our students are working persons. They're working. Some of them have families. They have persons who depend on them, and they may not be able to take the time to attend, say, like, in person, a full time.
Come to campus and take the class.
Come to campus.
Yeah.
So it's really good that they have that option, where yes, you're together with a cohort, or you're working together with your colleagues, but you also have that flexibility. So if you have to put the baby to bed and do your schoolwork at 9 or 10 in the night, you can actually do that, and not miss out. So I definitely enjoy that component as well, interacting with students, supporting them, um, to ensure that everyone goes through the program and succeeds.
Right. And also feel like they're part of the school. That was one of
Absolutely.
the main reasons that we wanted to have a coordinator, is to make sure that they still feel connected, that there's a
Right.
sense of community and belonging.
Right. And as you said, Laura, I'm the coordinator, but you know very well it's a team approach.
It is, yeah.
There are so many others, okay? Student services, I need to call out on them, you know, when it comes to advising the students and following up with them, your office, and many, many others.
Yeah.
So there's a whole team.
There is definitely a team,
Yeah,
but
supporting.
you're definitely critical on that team to staying in
Uh,
touch with the students. And we appreciate you playing that role. Let me ask you a personal question. What is a hidden talent that you have?
yes, I have a few.
Okay, great. I want to hear these hidden talents.
Okay, one, I love baking. I really do. And when I say baking, bread in
Baking
particular.
bread. Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
There's no recipe. Every batch is different.
Wow. Okay, so it's like
Yeah, it's like an experiment in
yeah.
progress. Sometimes it tastes really good, like the last batch I made. Sometimes it's not
Not
so
so
good.
good. Okay.
Yeah, so
But you love experimenting, and so do you make sourdough bread?
I made it accidentally once.
You made it accidentally.
Accidentally. I decided to experiment with my making yeast. So I
Uh-huh.
used raisins and sugar and made yeast. And then I kneaded the dough and it wasn't rising. So I decided to leave it like for a day or two.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then afterwards, once eating it, it was like, oh, what's this aftertaste? It's like, oh, it's a little sour. Oh my goodness, sourdough bread. Yeah, so I stumbled upon it.
Okay. Is there a particular you say you don't cook with you don't bake your bread with a recipe, but is there a go-to bread that you bake definitely?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So definitely, so you know, adding oats and some nuts and coconut flour.
Okay.
Yeah, coming
Uh-huh.
from the Caribbean, I love
Yep.
coconuts.
Okay.
So coconut is usually in there.
Okay.
Yeah, and I love crafting. I love doing things with my hands.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And is there anything specifically that you do crafting?
Yes, I do. I like sewing.
You
I
like sewing?
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
you know, just things to wear,
That's nice.
simple things.
Yeah, and you mentioned something earlier to me about your sewing.
I did.
Yes.
And you want me to share that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is one, my inner
Yeah,
blouse.
yeah, I like that you made that blouse.
Yeah,
I love
that's
it.
one of my creations.
Yeah, that's
In my
fantastic.
spare time.
Yes. Well, I might have to use your services. The one thing that, much to the dismay of my mother, I did not learn to sew. So I can do buttons and like little mending, but
Right.
to make a shirt like that, no, I'd have to go to the store or buy it online.
It's relaxing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. I
Yeah.
love that. So baking bread and sewing are your
Mhm.
two hidden talents.
Right. I would
Yes.
say.
That's fantastic. All right, final question.
Mhm.
What is your favorite aspect of being part of the Rutgers community?
Oh yes. I'm definitely happy to be here. As I said, Laura, I mean, I worked in the clinical field. I worked in the public health field. And I wanted a change. I wanted something new. I wanted something different. I wanted flexibility, and Rutgers has that. Um, and in addition, there's a whole team, as I said. So persons feel like they're part of a team. You feel like you know you're part of a bigger picture, and you're made to feel welcome, and you have an opportunity to be yourself, whosoever you are. You're respected. So it's great.
It's great. Well, we're happy that you're here as well.
Yes,
So
it's
thank you.
absolutely great. I enjoy it.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us today.
Okay.
And thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time on Academic Matters.